Hare Krishna everyone, welcome back to Shravanam Diaries podcast. I'm your host Sulalita Devidasi and we are reading teachings of Lord Caitanya by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This is chapter 17, Lord Caitanya, the original personality of Godhead. Those who are under the impression that there is material contamination in the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and in His devotional service are called Mayavadis. According to their imperfect speculation, the impersonal Brahman is the only existence in the cosmic manifestation. As soon as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is introduced, they consider that His personality arises from Maya or the external material energy. Such persons consider all incarnations of the Supreme Lord to be contaminated by this material nature. According to them, the material body and the activities of matter are all that give a living being an individual identity. According to them, liberation means the end of an individual identity for the pure living being. In other words, the Mayavadis maintain that when a living entity is liberated, he becomes one with the Supreme, impersonal Brahman. According to such Mayavada philosophy, the personality of Godhead, His abode, His devotional service, and His emotional devotees are all under the spell of Maya and are consequently subjected to the material condition. Those who forget the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord, His abode, His devotional service, and His devotees, consider all these to be but manifestations of material activity. One who thinks that there is a possibility of arguing about transcendence is called an agnostic, and one who thinks that there is a possibility of criticizing transcendence is called an atheist. Lord Caitanya wanted to accept all kinds of agnostics, atheists, skeptics, and unfaithfuls and swallow them in the flood of love of God. Oh, that's so beautiful. It's just Kṛṣṇa. Haribol! We have a chance. We are if I would be a skeptic, I suppose. But Lord Caitanya wanted to accept all kinds of, this is so beautiful. So, swallow them in the flood of love of God. Therefore, He accepted the renounced order of life to attract all these forces. He's come for all of us. Every single one of us. Lord Caitanya remained a householder until his 24th year. In the 25th year of his life, he accepted the renounced order. After accepting the renounced order, sannyasa, he attracted many other sannyasis. When he had been spreading the Sankirtana movement as a family man, many Mayavadi sannyasis did not take his movement very seriously. But after the Lord accepted the sannyasa order of life, He delivered not only Mayavadi sannyasis, but speculative students, atheists, and those who were attached to fruitive activities and unnecessary criticism. The Lord was so kind that He accepted all these people and delivered to them the most important factor in life, love of God. The most important factor in life. Jai, Prema Pumartho Mahan, right? Prema Bhakti, love of God, is the most important artha, the most important value in life. To fulfill His mission of bestowing love of God upon the conditioned souls, Lord Chaitanya devised many methods to attract those who were uninterested in love of God. After He accepted the renounced order, all the agnostics, critics, atheists, and mental speculators became His students and followers. Even many who were not Hindus and who did not follow the Vedic principles accepted Lord Chaitanya as the supreme teacher. The only persons who avoided the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were those sannyasis who were known as the Mayavadi philosophers of Benares. Their plight is described by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami. Quote, "The Mayavadi philosophers of Benares were less intelligent because they wanted to measure everything by direct perception." Reminds you of somebody who wants to measure everything by direct perception? We will not point fingers, but there are such people. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, today is his disappearance day, by the way, he says they were less intelligent. They wanted to measure everything by direct perception. On this basis, they calculated that whatever is perceived by material means is Maya, or illusion. Since Maya is full of variegatedness and the absolute truth is transcendental to Maya, they concluded that there is no variegatedness in the absolute truth. Unquote. During Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time, there were also other impersonalist philosophers known as the Mayavadi philosophers of Saranatha. Saranatha is a place near Benares where Buddhist philosophers used to reside, and even today many stupas of the Buddhist Mayavadis can be seen. The Mayavadi philosophers of Saranatha are different from the impersonalists who believe in the impersonal manifestation of Brahman. According to the Saranatha philosophers, there is no spiritual existence at all. The fact is that both the Mayavadi philosophers of Benares and the philosophers of Saranatha are entrapped by material nature. None of them actually know the nature of the absolute transcendence. Although superficially accepting the Vedic principles and considering themselves transcendentalists, the philosophers of Benares do not accept spiritual variegatedness. Because they have no information about devotional service, they are called non-devotees, or those who are against the devotional service of Lord Kṛṣṇa. The impersonalists speculate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His devotees and subject them to the tests of direct perception. But the Lord, His devotees, and His devotional service are not subject to direct perception. In other words, spiritual variegatedness is unknown to the Mayavadi philosophy. Therefore, all the Mayavadi philosophers and sannyasis criticized Lord Caitanya when he was conducting his Sankirtana movement. They were surprised to see Lord Caitanya chanting and dancing after he accepted his sannyasa order from Keshava Bharati, for Keshava Bharati belonged to the Mayavadi school. Since Lord Caitanya, therefore, also belonged to the Mayavadi sect of sannyasis, the Mayavadis were surprised to see him engaged in chanting and dancing instead of hearing or reading the Vedanta Sutras, as is the custom. The Mayavadi philosophers are very fond of the Vedanta, and they misinterpret it in their own way. Misunderstanding their own position, they criticized Lord Caitanya as an unauthorized sannyasi, arguing that because he was a sentimentalist, he was not actually a bona fide sannyasi. All these criticisms were carried to Lord Caitanya when he was at Benares, and he was not at all surprised at them. He even smiled when the news were carried to him. He did not associate with the Mayavadi sannyasis, but remained alone and executed his own mission. After staying for some days in Benares, he started for Mathura. Chapter 18, Conversations with Prakashananda. Do we have time? Okay, a few minutes. According to the principles of the Mayavadi sannyasis, singing, dancing, and playing musical instruments are strictly prohibited, for they are considered to be sinful activities. The Mayavadi sannyasi is simply supposed to engage in the study of Vedanta. Therefore, when the Mayavadi sannyasis in Benares saw that Lord Caitanya was indulging in singing, dancing, playing musical instruments, and always chanting Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, they concluded that he was not educated and that out of sentiment he was misleading his followers. Shankaracharya's injunction was that a sannyasi should always study the Vedanta and that he should be satisfied by simply having one cloth and nothing more. Because Lord Caitanya neither studied the Vedanta formally nor ceased from singing and dancing, he was criticized by all the sannyasis at Benares, as well as their householder followers. When Lord Caitanya received news of this criticism from his students and disciples, he simply smiled and started for Mathura and Vrindavan. When he returned to Benares on his way from Mathura to Jagannath Puri, he stayed at the house of Chandrasekhara. Chandrasekhara, who was considered a Shudra because he was a clerk. In spite of this, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made his residence at his home. Lord Caitanya made no distinctions between Brahmanas and Shudras. He accepted anyone who was devoted. Customarily, a sannyasi is supposed to take shelter and eat in the home of a Brahmana. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the independent Supreme Personality of Godhead used his own discretion and decided to stay at Chandrasekhara's house. In those days, by misusing their Brahminical heritage, the Brahmanas had created a law to the effect that anyone not born in a Brahmana family was to be considered a Shudra. Thus, even the Kshatriyas and Vaidyas were also considered Shudras. Well, we're talking 4,500 years down the line in Kali Yuga. Wow. Because the Vaidyas were said to be the descendants of Brahmana fathers and Shudra mothers, they were sometimes called Shudras. Thus, Chandrasekhara, although born in a Vaidya family, was called a Shudra in Benares. As long as Lord Caitanya stayed in Benares, he remained at Chandrasekhara's home, and he took his food at the home of Tapan Mishra. When Sanatana Goswami met Lord Caitanya at Benares, he learned the process and principles of devotional service during 2 months of continual teaching. Lord Chaitanya's instructions to Sanatana Goswami have been described in the first part of this book. After receiving these teachings, Sanatana Goswami was authorized to propagate the principles of devotional service and Srimad Bhagavatam. It was during this time that both Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhara were feeling very sorry about the strong criticism against Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and they came together and prayed for the Lord to meet the Mayavadi sannyasis. We will read about this tomorrow. So, thank you so much for tuning in. The link to this book is in the description. Please check out our website shravanamdiaries.com. Thanks for tuning in. We shall see you next time. Hare Krishna.